On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we share the inspiring journey of Troy Melton, a single-parent father who raised his son Nick into an outstanding young man and a remarkable athlete. For the first 7 years, it was just Troy and Nick, building a bond through life's up and downs. Everything changed when Troy met Heidi, whose love and support completed their family. You won't want to miss this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are, whatever you happen to be doing, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, the Big X, at tdecora8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decora. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today wherever you happen to be. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will be released on Monday and Thursday morning, featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc., etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. We're going to go through a little episode and guest intro. According to the internet, and Troy, the internet is always right.
True that.
True that. November 4, 2024, as the nation rang in the new year, the U.S. Census Bureau projected the U.S. population will be about 336 million people at midnight on January 1st, 2025. According to recent statistics, there are over 3.3 million single fathers in the U.S., comprising about 20% of all single-parent households. And doing the math, that's less than 1% of all people in the United States. Today, I welcome Troy Melton to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Troy grew up in Janesville, Wisconsin in a single-parent household raised by his mother. When he was in 8th grade, his mom passed away. He, along with his brother and sister, moved in with his aunt and uncle. Troy would graduate from Orfordville Parkview High School in southern Wisconsin. After high school, his talents would take him to the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and he would join the Pioneer football team. In his 4th year of college, Troy and his girlfriend would welcomed a son, Nick, into the world. They tried to make parenthood work, but grew apart, which made Troy became a single parent to Nick. I'm so glad you could join us today, Troy Melton. What is up?
Not much, Tim. Happy to be here. I used to think I was 1 in a million. I guess I'm 1 in 3 million, so a little more special than I thought I was. So.
A little more special than you thought you were. We want to share a little banter because and I'm gonna preface this a little bit because I'm a big follower of you on Facebook, and when you do the Facebook Live and you talk about anything Badgers, Bucks, Packers, all of a sudden I start watching, and then I look at the clock and I'm 25 or 30 minutes into this, and I've lost complete track of time because your content is always spot on. I'm going to throw some things at you, and I'm just going to sit back and listen, and hopefully the listeners on the podcast today will be listening. But I'm going to give you about 3 minutes on each.
All right.
Green Bay Packers, the green and gold. What do you think we need to do to get over the hump of losing that first round playoff game? Ready, set, go.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Packers, I think, are way ahead of where we thought they would be 2 years ago, which is some of the problems that, the general fan like I have, like you have, like when Love was taking over for Rodgers 2 years ago, you would have thought it was going to take a few years. We got ahead of schedule last year, and I think that kind of created a little bit of a false sense of where they were. Now, the whole roster's 25 years old.
Youngest team in the playoffs the last 2 years, I hear.
Yes. The last years. Now, when you're watching the Packers play, I'll be watching them quite often. And, I got a big cave where I like to watch the games with my buddies.
Yes, you do.
My buddies will be like, what's wrong with these Packer receivers? And I'll look over and their kid will be in the basement with us. And I go, well, he's your son's age at 24 years old. I mean, are you having any problems with him making his bed? They're going to make some mistakes out there. So the Packers to me are probably, they're still on the track they were 2 years ago. Love's going to be the guy. It took Favre probably 5 years to become consistent, His second year, Favre threw 24 interceptions. People forget that. He threw 19 touchdowns, 24 interceptions his second season in the league. His third, actually, because he sat the first year with the Falcons. First year in Green Bay, had a nice year. So he threw 24 interceptions. Later in his career, he actually threw 30. So I think we need to give room for Love just to kind of go through some. He's got 35 starts under his belt. All the players he's playing with are young, just like him. So this is a situation with the Packers, like we're disappointed today. I was disappointed Sunday, but really they're kind of sitting where they're at. Me and you grew up in the 80s. We know how hard this is. The Packers, the Badgers, the Brewers, the Bucks, to everybody to a certain extent has kind of spoiled the Wisconsin fan for how successful we've really been.
All right, so let's go Badger basketball. You did sneak in the Brewers.
Yeah,
you did sneak in the Badger football.
Yeah.
So we're going to go Badger basketball because you and I know that that's one of our first loves. Go ahead.
Badger hoops is fantastic. It's a good time to be a Badger fan. Now, Coach Gard has, had some heat on him over the years. Coach Gard is a fantastic coach. He's made a big change in how he's running things. And it's, most people would call it a big change, but it's actually we're just playing faster offense. The defense and offensive principles that they're using they're just based in fundamentals. So I'm real excited about them. Now, before the season, nobody could expect, like a Tanjay to do what he's doing. That's been a great find. The guy on the team that I just love watching play, and I love watching all of them play, is Blackwell. John Blackwell is, I heard a recent comp to Drew Holiday. And if you physically just look at the two standing there, it's almost weird.
I would take about 6 John Blackwells.
Oh, John Blackwell. You wouldn't lose any games if you had. And the guy you'll watch once a game when things get tough, especially in our recent games. He just seems to take over and have a different edge to he's just got that personality, that dog they like to call it. Everybody likes to call these. Wisconsin's not ever had a lot of dogs. Now, I'm not going to get into the specific definition of that. It's different for different people. But it's this year we seem to have some tougher. You start throwing Klesman in there with a Blackwell. Crowell. People have. He's not quite the dog. We'd like him to be a little bit more aggressive. But I like the makeup of the team. Kamari McGee's a dog. I mean, Carter Gilmore's a dog. Carter Gilmore does more on the basketball floor that the novice fan just will never notice.
Because you and I have a direct connection to Mom and Dad Gilmore. We do see other things that the average parent or average Joe fan didn't see the last couple of years when Carter's getting out there and doing his thing. Now everybody's starting to get an appreciation for the dude. We've appreciated him since he stepped foot on the floor. He can do all of the scrappy rebounds. He's getting a lot more 50-50 balls, but yeah, he's just been a joy to watch, and I've been cheering for him.
Oh, I mean, we've both coached numerous teams, and you always got to have a kid on the team, or preferably a couple that, they're just a glue guy. Gilmore is the ultimate glue guy.
We're going to have to snip this one a little bit shorter, but the Milwaukee Bucks, some people once in a while ask me, hey, you got something underneath your eye? And I said, yeah, it's the stains. I have not, I still got stain marks from when I cried when the Bucks won it all. So do they have another shot at the title this year? They
do. It's limited. I would not mind playing the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round. They're the number one right now. We're the 4. The Celtics are a 2, and there's 4 or 5 games behind them. So you get Cleveland in the second round. That's a big jump. And I think the Bucks are looking at the standings and trying to almost stay in that 4 or 5. Well, they're not going to. The Bucks are like the Packers of a Rodgers. This is a championship or bust situation. Anything else is going to be a disappointment. So if you have to play, Cleveland, Boston, you got to beat everybody anyways. This can only end in one good way for Bucks players and Bucks fans in the front office, and as if they win it all. It's kind of what they've set up. They're all in. They can do it. It's going to be hard, but if Middleton is 75, 80% at the playoff time, and the key though being Giannis and Dame are 100% for an entire playoff run, I'd have a hard time betting on the Bucks. Now, I wouldn't take them as the favorite, but I'm not putting $1,000 on the Celtics or something to beat them. The Bucks can beat anybody. I mean, they have the best player in the world who is just a hardworking, loyal cat.
Dog.
This could happen. But go ahead, Timmy. We better.
Well, I'm thinking, because I'm going to be in Vegas in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to maybe put a little money down on the Packers because Troy said so.
I would think so.
I'm going to put a little money down on the Badger basketball team getting into the Sweet 16 because Troy said so. And Bucks, I just wanted to beat the Celtics. I could care.
Oh.
I mean, yes, I would love to see them get to the NBA Finals, but if it was us beating the Celtics, and sorry to my buddy out there, Sammy Hauser, who I'm pulling for all the time.
Right.
Yes, I hope they beat the Celtics at some point. So,
me too.
Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, is a place that people can escape to from any problems that they have with their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere. People keep coming back with 4 locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County area can get to Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. Have you been to Buck and Honey's yet?
I haven't, but we're going to go soon.
We are going to go soon, and we're going to get some pizza. Pizza's the best stuff there. What is the reason for Troy Melton to be here in the Buck and Honey studios today?
Besides my obvious sports knowledge?
Besides your obvious sports knowledge. Okay. We set that up with the single parent thing. In my podcast, the podcast, we talk about telling our stories, and we tell them in kind of 3 separate items. What was it like before, what happened, and what is it like now? And I talked to Troy off air about what an inspiration he is. His body, after 33 years, his body of work has impressed, and it keeps going up and up, and I'm just so impressed. But anyway, Troy was raised in a single-parent home by his mom before she passed away when he was in 8th grade. Not something that should happen, but it did. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom all the way up through 13, 14 years old?
Yeah, so we lived in Janesville down in this area. It's kind of a grittier area of Janesville. Now, Janesville's gotten a little bit grittier over the years, but it's the old 4th Ward down by Monterey Stadium. Have you ever been down that way, Tim?
2002.
Did you play down there?
We won the level 4 playoff game with our Wanakee Warriors one down there. So yes, I've been there before.
Beautiful stadium. So, we lived so the school I went to is right there, Wilson School. It was me and my brother, Mike, who was 4 or 5 years younger than me. I don't have his ages. I'm not great at that. My sister's a year older than me, and Tim knows my sister, Robin.
Yep.
So it was tough. I do remember my mom just kind of, you're just scrapping to just survive basically down there. Now, my dad lived in town, and I'd seen him. I actually saw him for the first and I think last time live at my mom's funeral, actually. I don't have any, deep-rooted father issues concerning that, but that's just kind of the way that went. So it was just me and my 2 siblings and my mom, and she just kind of scrapped along, and it was a lot of tough times, but I did, you do learn a lot about, we forget when you're a kid, you're just evaluating. You don't even know you're evaluating, but you're just kind of constant, taking in information. To me, that was our life. It didn't seem that much different because there was a lot of single folks down there. Now, usually it was just kind of our lifestyle there. My mom was a simple lady, and she would work as a maid at some local motels and just try to scrap some dollars together. And it was just a poor neighborhood down there. So when you're young, you don't even know you're poor. You're just kind of rolling along.
You don't. I did want to ask because similar to you, I was raised by a single parent mom up through about 8 or 9. And when my dad moved in, it was still kind of a single parent situation. I went to my mom for a lot of things, but where I was distracted and then became addicted to sports, throwing a football around, shooting a basketball, just out of the house, I imagine your love for sports came from somewhere, and I'm going to guess it probably started in a youth level or YMCA.
Yep. It was back then at that Wilson school. We had a fantastic principal. He's kind of a legend there in Janesville. Hopefully some people are listening to this and they remember this Norm Graper. He'd basically come out at lunchtime in a full suit, and usually the principals and the teachers like no tackle football. Well, we played tackle football, and he was the all-time quarterback. I was going to say,
was he the all-time quarterback?
Yeah, and he was fantastic, and I have great memories of him, and I think he was huge in giving me an example of what you can do for people, and just kind of giving everybody, the attention that they deserve. And he was very good at it. And I know his daughter actually taught. She's retired now from Janesville. So this whole family's probably pounded 80, 90 years out in Janesville. I'm sure they affected a lot of lives. So,
well, he probably stepped in, and because teachers and administration kind of know everybody's background a little bit. Maybe there was a little bit of, hey, Troy comes from a single parent.
Yes.
Let's give him what he kind of needs, and they just kind of somehow know, or say they somehow feel. So he probably
for sure
fill that for you. You then are taken in by your aunt and uncle, and you pick up another kind of some brothers, some cousins. You were older then. They take you in. Tell us about your aunt and uncle.
Both fantastic. Now, he passed.
Okay.
That's kind of tough, but he passed about, it's been close to 20 years, I think. So he was a very serious person, very hardworking, never thought of himself, which is
Uncle
Randy, actually.
Uncle Randy, okay.
Which is where I ask myself numerous times, like, how can you not think about yourself? And some people are very good at it. It's a skill. He was exceptional at it. I don't think he spent 5 minutes in his life thinking of himself, which is, so I got a good example there. My Aunt Shirley took care of the kids. Now there's 5 kids, picked up my cousins, or they picked up us, I guess, actually. So money was a little bit easier then, but it was still thin. She took care of the family, made sure everything was taken care of there. So I walked into a pretty good situation. But, at that time, you're 13 years old. You're a boy. You're just not really saying much what you're feeling anyway, because that's just a time where I'm probably hanging in there. I'm just probably hanging in there.
You suppress a lot of things, which is what I'm finding out I did back then. But then we were all operating in the late 70s, early 80s. We were all operating under the code of silence.
Right.
We don't talk about that. And when we also don't talk about our business anywhere else.
Right.
It was the code of silence. So we be seen, but don't hurt. And, but you probably chose it for just maybe some confusion, or because we're dudes, we just don't talk about it much.
Yeah, I don't know why, you end up, eating the information the way you do. Some people, like you said, won't talk about it at all. Some people will talk about it freely. I'll talk about anything now with anybody. I love talking to you. Super open. And I think that's the way to go. But you have to build yourself into something like that. That's just not going to happen, quickly. That's going to take you years to kind of get that kind of comfort level.
It's therapy, so to speak. But it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't come easy. It took me 5 or 6 presentations and telling my story before it started to roll off my tongue. Now my life is an open book to anybody. And I'm I'm glad you're on, because I think we need a lot more men doing the work we're doing, is just being honest about how we were raised and what happened, and helping. And that's really the reason why I have you on the podcast, is so that you are into helping people and giving back. And this is a little more of a national, global level. We're all over the world, the podcast. Okay. You had a stellar high school career on the court, on the field, enough to attract the attention of UW, University of Wisconsin, Platteville head football coach George Christ. Eventually, you meet 2 amazing dudes once you are on campus. The first is a football teammate, Dave Shumway, who went on to a legendary career at the University of Wisconsin, Platteville. And the other Dells guy is yours truly, Tim, Coach Decora here. And we've been great friends ever since. And we can talk sports, we can talk politics. Most of the time it's about sports. And now we're getting into the kind of the deep stuff of, of what happened in our lives. How do we raise our kids? And then how are we helping ourselves? We're going to go now start to delve into why I asked you to come on. So during your third year of college, you meet a gal, you become an item, and you have a son.
Correct.
Nick Melton. Let's tell us about Nick right now. What is Nick doing right now?
So Nick's about 33, just turned 33 a couple weeks ago, actually. He lives in Janesville now. He went very successful athlete. I'll make that quick. That's not important, but it's interesting. And then he received a scholarship down to Kishwaukee Junior College for hoops down in DeKalb. And he kind of struggled. His first year, he played some decent minutes, and then I think he was kind of done with it. He had a little injury, and he probably, in hindsight, was probably done with sports going into to after high school. To be honest with you. But it did give him a chance to go and experience some things that I think he needed. Some things with his culture I think were huge, because him being of having some African-American descent in him, it was good to go down and be around some more people, kind of just have some more life experiences. So long story short there, he went to Mount Mercy. He was there about 3 months. The basketball season was just getting ready to start the games. And he called me up and said he'd been talking about moving to Colorado for years. Moved to Colorado, kind of needed to dig in maybe and find himself a little bit out there. Probably some things that we're going to get into now were affecting him more. And so he's doing fine. He ended up picking up a lot of skills when he was out there, and he's got a great job, and he's doing as well as I could expect. And I'm hoping he throws me some grandkids one of these days like you.
Well, I know, following his career from, afar, and following you and being as close as we are, it was just, like I said earlier, I'm still amazed. And I get, the older I get, the more I look at the body of work and what you did with Nick, essentially kind of by yourself at the beginning, and then you got some help, which we'll talk about. I
appreciate that, by the way, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, but he goes and becomes a WBCA All-Star, and that's, in the big grand scheme of things, he was never shooting for that. He was just playing basketball because he loved it, and he turned out to be an absolute stud on the basketball court, the football field, and then he shared with me the little baseball story. I don't know if we'll get to that one, but
no.
But he ends up being and getting what a lot of people want their kids to get out of it. But we talked about this off where it wasn't spent. You didn't spend $100,000 with trainers and your own gym in your backyard. It was just work in the driveway, and you did some coaching, and you had keys to the gym, and you were working with him without anybody else looking. And that's how it's done. And
yes.
I want that message to be out there too, that it's not about sticking a ton of money into your child and expecting this. You didn't. You stuck hard work into it, and Nick became a dog. And he was hungry and could do all those things. But we're going to talk a little bit more about you and him. Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 since episode 1, with 4 locations in the Madison area. 1 is always near. Very much like you have done in Orfordville with your coaching, Buck and Honey's gives back to the communities they serve. With a 5-star customer service and a welcoming atmosphere, 1 is always close by. In segment 2, you are going to talk us through what the ups and downs and difficulties and successes of being a single parent was like for Troy Melton. Please stay tuned if you're listening. Don't change that dial, because you don't want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency crisis services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim DeCora. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. December 20th, 1991, in the life of Troy, my good friend Troy Melton. That day changed your life. And 33 years later, we have seen your body of work and how well that has turned out. Tell us about the day you guys welcomed Nick Melton into the world.
So it was December 20th, 91, and we're living in a little apartment downtown Platteville above like that jewelry store down there, if you can picture it. Okay. So kind of middle downtown Platteville, and retiring for the evening, and Holly, Nick's mother, actually said, she thought something was up. And so we kind of rolled off to the doctor. And by the time we got in the room, it had to be 9:30, 10 o'clock. I can't remember the exact time. And the Badgers were on a late basketball game. They used to do those late Tuesday ESPN games. And me and the doctor are sitting at the end of the bed. And within 20 minutes, he's like, there he's it. And we just seemed awful relaxed. And so, the beginning of his entry into the world was a little bit, goofy, but the real work started then, and I had no idea what was to come, and who could.
Who does.
And who does.
But yeah, so he comes into the world. I mentioned off camera how you're such a sports guy, and maybe things went so well. We might have to take a look and do some fact checking. I bet you the Badgers won that night.
They probably did.
They probably did, but it was 91.
Probably Willie Sims slicing baseline.
Yep, Danny Jones.
Danny Jones, Rockford Boylan.
Tracy Webster dishing off some. You mentioned earlier. We mentioned that you tried to make things work with your girlfriend, and at some point you knew it probably wasn't going to work. And we talked again. You'll hear me say off air a lot, but we talked off air, and you were telling me how you were scrapping and grinding and trying to make things work because you're having to pull some money in. You're having to try to go back. You're in school. You're trying to do all this while you're caring for a 2 to 3 month old son. What were those first few weeks and months like when it was just you and Nick?
We made it to at least his first birthday. We did have a first birthday party together. It was probably shortly thereafter. Let's call it maybe 18 months. And then we decided to break up. And at that point, we knew it wasn't going to work that way, but I had no idea, which way we were going to go in terms of how we were going to handle, raising him. She ended up moving to Madison, and, things just kind of developed the way they did in terms of, she was probably trying to find herself. I kept him up there in Platteville for that stretch of time, probably 4 or 6 months, and tried to make it work. It was every day was just you didn't know what was going to go on. You didn't know, I needed babysitters. I needed, I'm dealing with 20 to 23-year-old men. I had some girlfriends up there that were friends that were helping me quite a bit. So it was it's hard to explain it. It was just a very confusing part of time, and I didn't know what I was going to do, to be honest with you. At that point, I was going to try to finish school. That became quickly something that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do. So I ended up moving back home.
Yeah. So you decided to move from Platteville back to your hometown of Orfordville.
Yep.
And you put college on hold, and it's been on hold ever since. And now it's starting to come back to me why. And it was pretty darn important why you had to put it on hold. And I'm glad you did, because what came out of this was a very good father and a son, and that relationship and everything. You moved back home. Was it support, familiarity? What was the reason going back to Orfordville?
Yes, all of that for sure. And, you needed a lot of help. And, we all have these moments in our life where I think you know what you need to do. Now, can you do that? Sometimes you just can't do it. But there's no mistaking that there's 5 to 10 times in your life when you have to do something, you know exactly what you have to do. It doesn't make it any easier or make it any, you just got to put your big boy pants on like we talked about. We'll talk about that later. For me, it was just like he didn't, introduce himself to this world. It was my responsibility. It's time to put my big boy pants up. So at that point, I feel like I just basically stopped thinking about myself. Maybe not immediately, but it shortly thereafter, I realized that I cannot think about myself. Myself it's not done. You need to take care of yourself. Never, put yourself to the side. Exactly. But my one thought waking up and my one thought going to sleep at night was going to have to be about him. And I didn't know how long that was going to be. And I didn't have a lot of the answers to what some of the things I was trying to figure out at that time were. But I knew that I was a capable person and I knew from right from wrong. So I was going to be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I was just, as you were talking about not thinking about yourself and thinking about Nick now, seems very similar to that little bit of time you spent with your Uncle Randy. That you might have saw that, and you alluded to it earlier that we learn, and we just by seeing things and how it happens, you probably picked up something from Uncle Randy. And then those days and weeks and months where you had to scrap and it's just you and Nick and you're having to do whatever you can to get babysitters there, you ended up getting that from your mom maybe a little bit. So that's
right.
That's kind of I was just putting those pieces together, and I don't know if you've ever looked at it that way, but I'm just from listening now. It's a good thing those things.
Yes, I think
came in your life.
I think that's exactly right. I think, we talked before off air that, don't ever think your kids aren't paying attention to you. I mean, it starts very early. I didn't know any of this stuff as I was younger. A lot of these things that me and Tim are talking about today, we didn't understand them at the time we were going through. I'm talking up to 5 years ago, where I was still trying to put some of this stuff together. Yeah, I did think I got a great example there, and it was very helpful. He was a big person on sometimes you just got to put one foot in front of the other. Now, he wouldn't say that because he wasn't an emotional person, my uncle.
Yep.
But you could just tell this is a one foot after another situation. And most things in life are going to be a one foot after another situation, really.
Yeah, especially when you become a single parent and one foot in front of the other and you're living hour to hour, day to day, and you said, I didn't know what the next day was going to hold. Yeah, it's kind of a guessing game, but you just did what you had to do, and you were smart enough to be able to get it done, and you did. So at age 7, Nick turned 7, you meet your current wife, Heidi Schwartz, one of the nicest, although I have really, truly, I've only talked and hugged her and whatnot,
right.
probably a handful of times, but
you're right on.
I just get that feeling that she cares and just a caring heart, and I hope I'm not speaking
nope, you're right on it, buddy.
Wrongly ever, but
everybody back home knows how much I love that woman, so you're right on it.
So how much did that help, having Heidi come into your life and Nick's life?
It was huge, and I'm going to give you I went to a tavern, which I never went to back then. So Nick's, he's going to be 7 like the next day, or he was even maybe 7 earlier that day. He was at my aunt's. I went to a bar and was totally out of the bar scene back then. I just never went. I mean, I had a 3-year-old.
And you had because there's other...
Yeah, other reasons.
Now we're going to get into the education part here a little bit. You have every reason to be in the bar all the time because you're a single parent.
Yes.
You didn't go that route.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So I ended up running into her. She was a friend through some mutual friends. We both ended up, we were in the same wedding about 6 months later. We had never met each other before this. So I met her and she immediately, so I was always very cognizant, and me and Tim talked about this earlier, where you don't want to introduce your children to somebody early in those situations. So I didn't do a lot of dating on purpose because I'd had enough girlfriends when I was younger. I was able to just I was fine. So I kind of took some time just to do it that way. And I also was thinking, I don't want to run a bunch of people past him because he's already going to have some confusion to how this all broke down anyway, probably. Now, at 5 years old, he's not thinking that or verbalizing that to me. But I know that I always call it, my wife's heard me say it, I knew the bill was coming. There's a bill coming.
Yep.
And so she's been very helpful. So that gave it a lot of stability. That, we talked earlier, I used to have to get him up real early to go to work. I have to pull him out of bed at 3:30 and take him to work in the morning. And then we got our relationship started. She met him numerous times. We eventually got married. Then it became a lot more normal. What is normal, though, Tim? Really, when you think about it, it was a normal situation. But it was as normal as it could be. It was a great situation. They have a fantastic relationship.
So you ended up getting a built-in babysitter out of this.
She had to go to work a little later than me, so I got, to roll off, and she might deal with them. So that was helpful. And so she's a fantastic human, and I couldn't be more blessed with her.
What was her relationship then like? Did it start out great and got better through time, or was it a little rocky? Because there's going to be people that are listening too that they're going to say, "Hey, you gotta hear what this guy says about a girlfriend who became his wife and came into this whole relationship." Mm-hmm. What was that like? Did she go in and dive in right away, or did it take a little time?
I think she dove in pretty well. She's a very loving person, so it was easy for her. And she also understood that there was probably a few tentacles in that situation that she, needed to be careful with, with Nick's biological mom, her role, my wife's role. So the role, so she kind of, I think, did a good job feeling it out. And it's a very tough situation for, I think, people to be in, because here you are meeting somebody new and you want to get to know them, and you can, but then you're going to have to, there's another factor here that's going to be time consuming, and or a lot of events are going to be, you're going to go with the three of you all of a sudden, so you don't have that time. Most people get married, they go off and go to dinners and do all their things for 3 or 4 years, and then they have their children. And then, so we had to kind of navigate that at the same time as her getting to know him. It's an interesting juggling act there.
I think it's truly a testament to what I know of her, mm-hmm. and how she would adapt to this whole situation, but just with her personality and loving you, and then all of a sudden having to love, mm-hmm. pour that same love into you that she's pouring into Nick. It just made, you probably couldn't ask for a better storm.
No, you got to remember, most of my family, has joked over the years about me and my wife getting a divorce, and that I'm the one out. Like, they're going to keep her. They're going to keep her.
Nick turned into an absolute stud on the field, football field, basketball court. And then we won't probably touch on the baseball thing. That was off air, and it was a pretty good story, but goes out for baseball senior and does really well. What kind of work did you put in with Nick? Because we do also have some of the listeners that are out there that want what Nick had. All conference, scored over 1,000 points, became recognized as one of the best players in the state his mm-hmm. senior year. Enough so that he ends up getting some junior college money. Mm-hmm. You alluded to this earlier, that you had to scrape and get by. So you're not putting a gym in your basement of your house. You're not sending him all over God's country to play AAU. You are not sticking hundreds of thousands of dollars into a personal trainer. You guys just got after it in the driveway or in the backyard or in the gym. Tell us a little bit about how that all worked with him.
Well, I've coached a bunch of kids over the years, and I bore them to death with these little sayings I like, but there's nothing more truthful than, you need to do work when people aren't looking. If you're going to be a good player, there's not a good player in this area that does not do a bunch of work when there's nobody looking. What does that mean? Everybody can go to practice. Everybody can go in the summertime. You got your Y. That's when people are looking. You have to do the stuff when people aren't looking. And that's what me and him did. We spent, just wearing out wearing out the driveway. Big time. Nobody shoots in their driveway anymore. Kids will ask you all the time, I'm known as a halfway decent basketball mind down there. So people will come to me, kids will come to me. And one time I looked at a kid, he was asking me for some advice, and he goes, I go, well, this is what I did with Nick. And he stopped, and now he's really paying attention to me because he sees the finished product, and he thinks I'm going to come up with a magic bean out of my pocket. And I go, we worked our ass off when nobody was looking. It's that simple. Especially a sport like basketball that you can play by yourself, basically. The skill part about it, you don't need a guy with a glove to throw something to.
From the stat I read at the beginning, that you're not the only single parent father out there. However, I think it's very unique, especially in our circles. And we talked about this before we set this whole thing up, that we looked at our friend group, and you maybe know somebody, but in our real tight circle, we don't know. And you're the single father that has gone on and done all of this work. But the reason you're here today is to give another father out there something that they can use to survive and thrive, just like you and Nick did. And this is your opportunity to share what worked for Troy Melton, and hopefully somebody out there, sister, a mother, a family, a neighbor, a coworker can say, hey, so-and-so, a guy talking to a guy friend. Hey, I know you're with your child and you're a single parent father and you don't know what to do. Here's something that you can do. Listen to this guy, Troy Melton, on Survive and Thrive 8791, episode 33. He gives you the tools to be successful. And they can pick the stuff they want and works for him and then leave the rest behind. But you're helping somebody. Here are the 5 suggestions to thrive for other single parents, especially dads. I think moms can use this too, but especially the dads that are out there. Here's what you shared with us. The first one, you kind of already talked a little bit about, but I'm going to let you hit again. Single parents really need to communicate with their child. You said I should have been talking to him more about his feelings. What goes on with that is don't assume it will magically be fine. And
right.
So go ahead and touch on that. I'll let you talk about 2 minutes on each of these.
I think it's, human nature to just, in my case, I think I was probably looking down at Nick at certain times and thinking, well, he seems like he's doing all right. Not communicating it, not verbalizing it to him. Here he is 4 or 5. And I think, me and you talked earlier, human nature is you just kind of hope everything will work out. And that's not a plan, as I've learned. So communication, I should have been more open to it. Now, I was probably still a little bit upset about certain parts of the relationship. So here I am probably hiding a little bit as the grown-up. I probably should have been more the lead on that. Now, I haven't had a ton of conversations with him on it, but I've had some where I know this was a factor. He was going through certain things. Here I am not really hiding from it. I wouldn't say it would be that strong of a word, but I'm certainly not taking it on. And here as I sit, I'm thinking, this cannot be affecting him, right? He's going to have a bill due. And I'm at the point in my life, a young mid-20s, where I'm not able to take it on in terms of I don't want to hurt his feelings. He's already going through something, and I think that's what happens to a lot of single parents is they think, well, they already have it bad enough. I'm not going to make them upset today. Well, that's not the way to go about that. And I would really like to do that over again and do that differently. The communication needs to just be wide open.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on the communication part, because I look at my own relationship with my kids and I wish I would have been a better communicator back then. And I can't look back on that now and let that bother the work I'm doing right now.
No.
And the work I'm doing right now overshadows some of that stuff. So the second part is an interesting thought process, but I really like it. You can't expect less of your child because what they were dealt with. And that was a little bit of adversity with the single parent, but you probably held Nick to higher expectations.
Human nature, again, is to protect the people that you care about. And I think people think that's a way to protect somebody they care about is by expecting less out of them. And so there's not so many disappointments. Well, but you better get used to taking some stuff on. And I coach a lot and kids are looking at me like I'm nuts. This is just experience. You're going to have to learn how to deal with things. You're going to have to learn how to deal with people that you don't like. So going back to Nick's expectations, I think some parents at times, they'd be in a similar situation to me, and then they're trying to buy him everything. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, because everybody's going to do things differently. But you have to just try to keep things as normal as possible. You want them to have a normal life. You want them to experience letdowns, experience triumphs, kind of learn how they're going to deal with all that, and I think we don't do that very well as parents these days. I think I did that strongly for him. I do not have all the answers on this stuff, by the way. You have to want them to be successful or expect things from them. I think the other way is you're really going to lead them down a path you don't want them going down to. Life is full of expectations, right or wrong.
I think if everybody looks at the body of work that Nick did from being young all the way through high school, at least the average person is going to say, I wish my kid could have Nick's career. And so that's the body of work I think we kind of need to look at and how you did that. Part number 3 is don't get so wrapped up in how your child is feeling. And I think it's important that you still have to be aware, but you also have to be aware of your own feelings and your own thoughts. And being a single father for the first 7 years, you probably didn't have time for yourself.
Right.
And I think as I'm reading this, you're also saying that even though you're a single parent, you probably should take some time for yourself somewhere for some self-reflection.
Yes.
Or taking care of yourself and maybe stepping away and giving them to the sitters or your aunt or uncle and just say, hey, I'm going to get away for the weekend and go and be myself.
Yeah, I think, your first thought is that you can't think of yourself anymore first, but that doesn't mean you can't think of yourself at all. So I think that's where it gets, you have to find your little niche there and make sure that you stay with the things that you enjoy. I was huge into sports. Quite honestly, I probably wouldn't have survived the time as easily as I did if I didn't have the outlet to like coaching the sports, just kind of taking some time to myself. Now I would haul him to the games or the practices with me. But it was kind of my thing. He was 2 or 3. He was in diapers at one point. I can just picture walking up the basketball floor, and he's behind me, and I'm thinking, holy smoke, somebody's going to have to change his pants. So you just got to, whatever that may be for you, but you do have to find time for yourself and make sure that you're not putting all of your happiness into, I used to call him the tiny kid, the tiny person in my house, and I think we do that. And, we're always in fear of that we're not doing enough. And I think married couples have the same thing. They're coming back and they've got mom and dad there and everybody's rested and there's enough money and everything, but you still have to take that time. Like you have to take time.
We call it self-care. I call it self-care, but that leads us then into that part of you got to keep moving forward. There's no room for feeling sorry for yourself, especially as a single parent, and then just keep moving forward. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's important because, like I said earlier, here I was a grown man, 23. My decisions, 22, whatever I was, my decision is what created the situation. To me, in the way I was wired, I needed to make sure that I did the right thing. And for me, doing the right thing was going to be a slow process. I mean, I was not going to be able to do anything quickly back then. This was going to have to be a foot after foot deal because I had no resources. Now, I had great family support from the backside. Now, that's a great resource, but I didn't have the education that I had planned on having. Wasn't going to have the career I planned on having. Not that we were going to make a ton of money coaching, but I was just kind of behind it. So I needed to make sure I slowed down and kind of just one day at a time. There's nothing I could fix in that situation. I mean, this was a lifetime project from that day on. And I still feel that way. I feel like you'll until you have kids and you get to me and Tim's age, and some of you have kids, you don't stop worrying about your children. Mm-hmm. It's funny so it became a lifetime project for me. And to do that the right way, I was going to have to take my time and not make any terrible decisions. That would be with, personal decisions with my own relationships with women or jobs. I mean, I was pretty limited to what I could do. I needed to stay pretty close to where I was. Didn't have a lot of possibilities to make a ton of money, but I knew one thing: he didn't have a part in why he was here. I had a huge part in why he was here, and he needed to be taken care of.
Last, number 5. Avoid placing blame or anger toward the other parent. The child, Nick, did not need to feel any of that negativity. And what I've known from you, ever since I've known you, is you're positive, you're upbeat, you love your sports, you love your Packers, Badgers, Bucks, but you're just a kind-hearted person that really puts everybody else's feelings ahead of your own. And this maybe gave you an opportunity where you could have gotten angry and, you know, this is about me now, and but you didn't. You chose the high road and maybe didn't talk about mom as much, but you again put your energies into taking care and meeting Nick's needs.
Yes.
Growing up.
If I'm thinking of Nick's needs and feelings first and foremost, which I was, you know, there's nothing positive, and I don't understand how anybody does it, to be honest with you. I know situations get weird, people get, you know, feisty and everything, but the killing or the degrading of the other partner in the situation is just, it's not conducive to anything good. Mm-hmm. There's not anything that would be good that would come out of me. So now I didn't say anything. I should have said more, you know, like we talked about earlier about some of his feelings and things, but I've certainly made sure never, and I mean never, it's zero. I ever said anything poor about his mom. I need to help him develop a relationship with her, not help him or not hurt him in his relationship with her. I mean, if you love your children, and everybody does, there is no way, I'll never understand how, you know, divorcees end up in these massive custody things and everybody's, it's just
hate one another, dislike one another,
it's
talk bad about one another.
Exactly. Time to put your big boy pants on, Timmy.
Yes, right. We definitely talked about that. What an episode. Knowing you for as long as I have, just recently, I realized what an amazing job you did with less than ideal circumstances.
Appreciate you.
Your story, you're inspiring. Your story will help anyone who may be a single parent, especially the dads out there. Your strength and your courage to share publicly with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew is an inspiration. And now your story it's helped me know a little bit more about you, which I did know a lot, but I didn't know everything. And it's going to help people in our podcast, our followers and our listeners it's going to help somebody out there. Call to action. Troy Melton just shared an experience that our listeners can learn from. These 5 things can help you or someone you know survive and thrive just like Troy did as a single parent. Those 5 things were: single parents need to communicate with their child. Don't expect less of your child because they might have been dealt some adversity. Don't get so wrapped up in their feelings. You need to make sure you do some self-care, and don't forget how you feel and think. Keep moving forward. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Avoid placing blame or anger toward the other parent. And you just said, doesn't make sense.
No.
Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Troy?
Well, I have an interesting story that kind of, I think, will wrap it up a little bit. It's kind of a half joke, but you know me by now. I used to have friends, or I have the same friends now, but let's say Nick was 3. And we're sitting there on a Saturday watching college football. And my buddies back home were fantastic dudes. They were great friends to have at that time. But occasionally somebody would ask me, what would you have done if Nick was a girl? And I said, I'd have learned how to braid hair. Got to do everything you got to do, Timmy.
Yes,
whatever
you
need, buddy. You got to just figure it out. I'd have learned how to braid hair.
Learn how to braid hair, and I did with a daughter. I learned how to braid hair. Awesome. On our next episode, we will have another amazing guest who will share how they survived and thrived. If you have a story to share or someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecor@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.
Peace. There's nothing you can't do, people.